Hey, 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 hi. Okay, that's enough. Hello, welcome back to the channel. It has been a hot minute, a hot cahoot of a minute since I've covered an iceberg, and that's kind of the reason why a lot of you subscribe to me. So I figured it's time to give back to the community a little bit, and I found an iceberg that I think is going to be really fun. Today we're covering the music myths in Urban Legends Iceberg. There's a lot of cool stuff on here, a lot of dumb stuff too, but we're going to cover most of it anyway. Want to give a shout out to MetaRunner on the Iceberg Charts website for making this. So we're going to start with Tier 1, and this is your super basic stuff like Tupac's still alive, Avril Lavigne was replaced, she has a body double, everything like that. And so I'm going to skip a lot of entries on here since we all know them, but I did pick a couple of the slightly more obscure ones that people might not know about. Gloomy Sunday. Suicides. In the 1930s, there was a Hungarian song called Gloomy Sunday, and in both Hungary and the United States, multiple people would end their lives after listening to this song. Since this was the 30s and we didn't have the technology and everything that we have now, it's hard to pinpoint whether this is actually true, whether this was the real reason that these people died or not. Especially because this was the time of a rise in fascism and the Great Depression, so it seems unlikely that this song was actually cursed. Alice Cooper bit a chicken's head. In 1969 at the Toronto Rock and Roll Revival, Alice Cooper found himself with a chicken on stage. He picked it up, threw it into the crowd, hoped it would fly. Instead, the crowd completely tore this thing apart. After that, rumors spread that Cooper bit the chicken's head off before he threw it into the crowd, but he confirmed he didn't do that. However, Frank Zappa, somebody who was close to him, said to just keep that story the real thing because rock and roll at the time was all about breaking social norms. Last one of Tier 1, The Curse of San Francisco. This is just a simple coincidence that a lot of bands play their final show in San Francisco. It happened to the band, the Sex Pistols, and the Beatles, so a lot of people just think San Francisco is cursed. Alright, Tier 2, we have a little bit of more interesting stuff here. However, this first entry is really pointless. Lady Gaga is a man. For a while, people thought Lady Gaga was a hermaphrodite, but she's not. That's literally the entry. Dark Side of the Moon and The Wizard of Oz. Rumor has it if you play The Wizard of Oz with no sound on and put Dark Side of the Moon on at the same time, they'll both sort of sync up. The visuals of the movie sync up with the lyrics and the sound of Dark Side of the Moon. This was debunked in 1997 when Pink Floyd drummer Nick Mason told MTV that it was complete nonsense and Dark Side of the Moon was actually based on The Sound of Music. Marilyn Manson on The Wonder Years. The Wonder Years was a sitcom that lasted from 1988 to 1993, and there was a child actor on there that people started to think became Marilyn Manson. Josh Saviano, the actor who played Paul Pfeiffer on the show, was the sort of culprit that these people thought was Marilyn Manson, and to this day, it's been completely debunked. However, this came up at a time when the internet was just getting on its feet, so it's one of the earliest internet mysteries. Gene Simmons had a cow tongue surgically attached. Okay, so Gene Simmons, the bassist for Kiss, has a huge tongue, alright? Elephant in the room, out of the way. It's clear he's proud of his tongue, because one of his trademarks is flaunting it on stage, but one day people decided his tongue is way too big, and it can't be real. But, to this day, it's his real tongue. He has a tongue that big, and he actually got it insured for $1 million. True story. Deborah Harry was almost killed by Ted Bundy. The Blondie lead singer was trying to get across town one night, and she didn't have a ride until a guy approached her in a white Volkswagen and offered one to her. This man ended up being none other than Ted Bundy, but she had no idea at the time. She knew she made a mistake as soon as she entered. The car smelled terrible. She realized the doors were locked. But as he drove her, she nonchalantly got the window open, hopped out. Bundy made a really sharp turn, and she got out of the car. A lot of people speculate whether this story is true or not, but going back and reading all the quotes, it seemed legit to me. Jimi Hendrix's acidic headband. Hendrix and drug use has always been a hot topic, and a lot of people don't know about it because now that he's gone, we can't ask him ourselves. Anyway, this topic deals with the rumor that Hendrix would put LSD into his headband before he performed and let it soak into his forehead. To me, it sounded kind of outrageous. Could be true, might not be true, we'll never know. Chester Bennington was murdered. So the Linkin Park singer ended his life a few years ago, but There's a lot of clues to this story that might make people think otherwise. First, none of Chester's family believes that this was a self-inflicted thing, and the cops only took 11 minutes to look at the evidence before ruling it a suicide. There are so many weird details to this story, and a lot of them go back to Chester's housekeeper. For example, there was a ton of blood on the floor when the coroners got there, and the housekeeper said it was from the family dog killing a chicken and a turtle in the house. Even after telling the cops this seemingly made-up story, they never tested the blood to see if it was animal or human. Chester had made attempts to end his life before, but 6 days before his death, he posted a picture saying it was the happiest he'd ever been. There's so much more here than what I'm saying, so many weird details, so I recommend you guys check this one out if you're interested in hearing more. Paul McCartney used a pseudonym for a song. This is a lot more lighthearted of an entry. Right after the Beatles broke up, Paul McCartney made a song with the Stevie Miller Band under the name Paul Ramon, and this is actually what inspired the punk band, the Ramones, to get their name. Kanye Quest Cult. So there's this game called Kanye Quest 3030, and it's an RPG. It actually looks really cool. You can play as different rappers and stuff. However, after people played the game for a while, they started finding some really sketchy stuff. If you typed the word ascend in a certain dialogue box, you'd be taken to a whole nother part of the game, and a message would come up saying that this new section was the real game. People started to think that this was put in by the Ascension cult and they were ripping people's IP addresses, but to me, I think the whole thing's just an ARG. My Way killings. In the Philippines, when Frank Sinatra's My Way would come on in karaoke bars, someone would be killed, and this happened very often, 6 times I think. So a lot of people there think the song is cursed. Michael Jackson nose replacement. Michael Jackson's appearance changed a lot over the years, and his nose is really just one thing that a lot of people questioned. According to him, he had only had 2 nose jobs, but some people believed that he had no nose at all. The most damning evidence of this is Jackson's former housekeeper, Adrienne McManus. He claimed Michael Jackson had an entire jar of noses that he would choose from. He quoted, "In his closet, he had a jar of fake noses and stage glue, which he told me he used for disguises." And this is from a Rolling Stone article. I mean, it's possible he had different noses, but there's no way this guy was born without a nose. Just in my opinion. Every Breath You Take lyrics are based on a real stalker. The Police's famous song is not about a lovely relationship, okay? So please stop using it as your wedding song. It's literally about a stalker. As far as I know, the stalker's not based on a real person or anything, but if you listen to the lyrics, it's pretty obvious what the song's about. Norway's Black Circle. This entry refers to the early Norwegian black metal scene, and I actually made a video on Varg Vikernes a while ago who will come up in this entry, but I had to remove it because I guess there was some misinformation in there, and I just didn't want to make people angry. This mainly deals with the bands Mayhem and Burzum, and it's such a huge rabbit hole that it would take a whole other video to explain, but basically Varg Vikernes killed one of Mayhem's bandmates, and there's a whole gray area as to whether he did this in self-defense or not. I recommend DeBurk321's video on this. I believe it's called The Most Disturbing Band of All Time, but you can easily find it if you go to his channel, and I'll put the link in the description. Robert Kennedy killed Marilyn Monroe. So on the night of Monroe's death, which we all know is from an overdose, Robert Kennedy called her on the phone and they had a really, really nasty argument. Because of this, some people think he played a role in her death. Others believe that things were just so crazy in America at the time that the government didn't want John and Robert talking to Marilyn, who was a leftist. So some believe it was a hit put out by the government. Phil Spector nearly shot John Lennon. Phil Spector, the legendary producer, ended up being a terrible person. But this entry is completely true. He did almost shoot John Lennon. During a session of rock and roll in 1973, he pulled a gun on Lennon inches from his head. There were also reports that he would take his gun and just chase Lennon through the studio. Now that we know Spector has had charges of murder, it's not unlikely that this story is 100% true. The Nixon administration killed John Lennon. So we know John Lennon, the writer of Imagine, he was part of the hippie culture in the 60s, and we know Nixon didn't like that all too much because he was Mr. Vietnam. But in 1972, John Lennon and Yoko Ono were threatened to be deported just because of a small possession of marijuana charge. And because of this, it made them eligible to be deported. This is also 100% true because FBI files were found to this day saying that they wanted to neutralize Lenin, and neutralize can be up to interpretation, but to me it sounds pretty clear what that means. So while neutralize may have just meant getting him out of the country, it could have meant something far more sinister. Pink Floyd's Pig Balloon. So the cover for Pink Floyd's Animals has a big pig balloon in the background, and this was a real balloon. Before they decided to do the photo shoot, they hired a gunman that could shoot the balloon down in case anything went horribly wrong. But ironically, on the day of shooting, they didn't bring the gunman with them, and something did go horribly wrong. The balloon fell out of the sky, and it landed on a farm, and it scared a bunch of cows, and the owner wasn't too happy about this. A lot of people speculate whether the band did this on purpose as like a publicity stunt, but it's also something that we don't really know right now. Alright, another day, another tier. Tier 3. Marilyn Manson removed a rib to blow himself. Yes, I said that right. This was a rumor that Marilyn Manson surgically removed his rib so that he could pleasure himself. This rumor went on for so long because he wouldn't confirm nor deny it. And knowing how strange Manson could be with everything, people thought it might have been true. But a couple years ago, he finally came out and was like, yeah, I didn't get my rib removed. Robert Johnson made a deal with the devil. So Robert Johnson was a legendary blues guitarist, and some people just couldn't handle the fact that a black man was this good at playing guitar. So the whole theory here is that people thought Robert Johnson went to a crossroads between Route 49 and 61 and made a deal with the devil there, and the devil gave him guitar superpowers. But I'm pretty sure this happened in the 40s, so it's pretty clear this was just an instance of racism. Lou Reed made children cry for a song. So Lou Reed made a track called The Kids, and it has audio of children crying towards the end. A rumor started to spread that Lou Reed presented his own children the news that their mother had just been killed in a car accident, which is just beyond screwed up, but luckily this was completely false. The footage of the kids crying was actually just kids protesting that they didn't want to go to bed. So it's a lot more lighthearted than it initially sounded like. It's fun to smoke the devil's lettuce. There was a group of Christians that thought Queen's song Another One Bites the Dust contained subliminal messages if you played it in reverse. They said if you played the song in reverse, it would sound like it's fun to smoke marijuana. And so Christians weren't, this specific group of Christians wasn't happy that the song did that, but it's not even that definitely wasn't intentional by Queen or anything. Kurt Cobain Ren and Stimpy song. The TV show Ren and Stimpy had a huge mark on pop culture, but something not a lot of people know about is that Kurt Cobain actually auditioned to perform a song for it. Kurt showed the showrunners his song, but the story is that they didn't like it all too much, so they kicked him out of the studio. I'm pretty sure it is confirmed that Kurt Cobain did write a song for this, but it's not confirmed whether they really just blew up on it or not. Keith Richards snorted his father's ashes. This one's true. He and his father were, I guess, really close, and he snorted the ashes to show how close they were, how big a connection they had. It's kind of endearing, but also kind of weird. I don't think I would smoke one of my loved ones' ashes, but you do you, man. Dave Mustaine and Vladimir Putin are the same person. This is strictly a picture thing, but you look at these two photos side by side and you tell me. John Bon Jovi's Star Wars Christmas song. Yeah, before Bon Jovi blew up, John Bon Jovi was making Christmas songs for Star Wars. It was called R2-D2, We Wish You a Merry Christmas, and it was all about R2-D2. It's just kind of funny that this was John Bon Jovi's upbringing, and yeah, it's a cool little story. In the Aeroplane Over the Sea is about Anne Frank. Wasn't sure why this was on the Iceberg because it's pretty obvious that that's what the album's about. Jeff Mangum, the lead singer for Neutral Milk Hotel, would have dreams about Anne Frank and just wish he could have saved her when she was alive. He said sometimes his dreams would become so nightmarish that that's really what inspired him to write In the Aeroplane Over the Sea, to get these just super dark thoughts out of his head. Keith Richards replacing his blood. For a while, Keith Richards had a heroin addiction, and so when he got clean, people started to spread rumors that he got clean by literally taking his heroin-infused blood, getting rid of it, and replacing it with new blood. This obviously wasn't true. Rod Stewart got his stomach pumped. Okay, this one's actually really funny. So there was this story that Rod Stewart was like on a boat with a bunch of sailors, and the story goes that he pleasured them with his mouth. And he had to get his stomach pumped because he became so full of, you know, a certain substance that semen contain. Rod Stewart likes to joke about it because obviously this also isn't true, but he knows why the story came about. There was a publicist that Rod Stewart knew, and the publicist didn't like him very much, and so he's the one who like started to spread the rumor, but Rod Stewart was super cool with it and just thought it was really funny. Charles Manson auditioned for the Monkees. This isn't true because Manson was in jail at the time. Don't Worry, Be Happy artist ended his life. This also isn't true. The song was written by a guy named Bobby McFerrin. Don't Worry, Be Happy blew up in 1988, and Bobby McFerrin today is still very much alive. I'm not sure where the rumors came from or why they spread so rampantly, but yeah, the guy is still alive and happy. Frank Zappa instrumental album had a parental advisory sticker. Frank Zappa had always been against censorship in his life, and he really didn't like the Parents Music Resource Center, which is the thing that says you have to have like a parental advisory sticker on your album. Ironically, Zappa's own instrumental album, no lyrics or anything, got one of these stickers. And it wasn't because of some corporation or anything, it was because like the retailer did it. And I'm not sure why, it might have just been like as a big joke to highlight Zappa's aversion to this thing. Panchico death metal. I actually made a video on this a while ago, so go check that out if you're interested. But basically the story goes, someone found an old CD in a record store, and it had so much disc rot on it that they couldn't really make out who the band was, and it became like a whole internet mystery. And eventually one of the band members in Panchico found the post on the forum like about the CD, and they like got back together for a little bit. So everybody knows who Panchico is now, and if you go to their album on Spotify, you can actually listen to the disc rot versions, and it's pretty cool. The Rite of Spring caused a riot upon its first performance. This is true. This was a ballet. The audience was just so angered by how avant-garde everything was, like the instrumentals and the dancing and everything, and apparently that warranted a whole riot. People thought the choreography and everything just seemed like the work of a madman, and so people rioted for whatever reason. Taylor Swift is a 4chan user. This has been a very long, ongoing mystery because people have found multiple instances of evidence of Taylor Swift being on 4chan, but at the same time, it's very likely that these are just people posing as Taylor Swift. However, there was this guy on Reddit that posted this whole like smorgasbord of pictures with possible proof, and I wasn't really able to zoom in on these and make my own decision, but I think it's unlikely that Taylor Swift is like a regular on 4chan. Billy Idol wrote White Wedding to put down his sister. This is partly true, as the song was a little bit inspired by how he didn't like his sister's fiance, but Idol also said that this wasn't the full intent of the song. White Wedding was supposed to show like cocaine use, and so I guess it was just like bits and pieces of each thing. But from what I read, his sister is still happily married to this man, so Idol was in the wrong, I guess. The woman on Black Sabbath's debut album cover is a real witch. So this album cover, I think it originated in 1970, and for like 50 years, we didn't know who the woman on it was. And so since this woman was so mysterious and nobody knew her identity, people started to speculate that she doesn't actually exist and she's like a real witch or demon. But finally, in 2020, just 2 years ago, we figured out the truth to this, that she was an actress named Louisa Livingston, and she's still alive today. I actually think Rolling Stone did an interview with her about the album cover and everything. It's kind of funny how we speculate so much on the unsolved when the answer could be right in front of us. God, what an awful racket. This is a heavy metal band that I wasn't familiar with before I did this Iceberg, but I guess there's a lot of controversy and mystery around this band. They go by GWAR, G-W-A-R, and people would often speculate what the acronym meant. GWAR kept telling people that there is no acronym, but some people would say it's God, what an awful racket, or gay woman against rape. But anyway, this band's known for their super weird performances, and they're just very eccentric. All their stage gags are really strange, and they're definitely like a little more than a band. They have some acting in them and everything. Curse of the Ninth. This is a classical music urban legend that after composers write their ninth symphony, they're cursed and they will die. Like, they'll die in the process of writing their 10th. And this happened to a lot of composers. It happened to Beethoven, Schubert, and Mahler. And Mahler was aware of this curse before he finished writing his 10th symphony, but it also happened to him. Alright, tier 4. The Love Roller Coaster. A while ago, a band called the Ohio Lovers made a song called The Love Roller Coaster. And about a minute and a half into the song, you can hear a scream in the background. This scream sparked a lot of myths and controversy and urban legend. Some people thought that somebody was actually murdered for the song, and some people thought that somebody was like badly burned for the song. It all turns out that this was just one of the bandmates that did a scream to add a little bit of flair to the track, and there was absolutely nothing sinister to it at all. Radio Birdman singer ate from a human skull. This one's actually true, believe it or not. The band's lead singer had a human skull. I don't know where he got it from, and he actually named it. He would bring it to shows, and it would sort of like creep people out and stuff. And eventually they bought sheep brains to put into the skull, and it wasn't supposed to go any further than that. However, during a show, the lead singer decided to eat the sheep brains right out of the skull, which immediately got like everyone in the audience to just leave. They were disgusted. Yeah, I think this is one of the ones on this iceberg that really shocked me. Like, I couldn't believe this was real. Iggy Pop offers $1 million to off himself. Iggy Pop has always been such a controversial figure, and he was into a lot of things that he probably shouldn't have been into. And a rumor spread that he like paid the owners of Madison Square Garden if he could like commit his act there. Andy Warhol butted in and said he's not going to do it at Madison Square Garden. He's going to do it somewhere else on New Year's Eve. Although he never offed himself, we don't know if it's true, if he did like pay someone $1 million and was going to go through with his plans and just backed out. But this is another one that we'll never probably know the answer to. A pizza delivery man played the piano for taking care of business. This is a fun rumor that BTO got a pizza man to play piano for their hit song. Rumor has it they just like invited him in and were like, yo, start playing a riff. And that's how we ended up with the song today. As much as I like that story, it's not true. This never happened. A pizza man did not compose Taking Care of Business. Igor Stravinsky was arrested for changing a chord in the national anthem. So there was a rumor that the Boston police arrested Igor Stravinsky for changing a chord in like a rendition of the Star Spangled Banner, because there's a federal law that says you cannot mess with the harmonization of the national anthem. This isn't exactly how it went down. It went down a little bit different. The police told him he had to remove his new rendition of the national anthem for the day. He was like performing it somewhere, I think. So he was threatened about like changing a chord arrangement in the national anthem. However, I'm not sure if that law I mentioned earlier is actually true. It'd be kind of funny if it is, but then again, this is supposed to be a free country, and if we're not allowed to, like make a remix of the national anthem, then what are we really doing? Everyday chemistry. So everyday chemistry is a sort of like smorgasbord of unreleased Beatles songs, mostly from like the Beatles as solo artists. Nobody really knows who put this together, though. There's like a bit of a story about the anonymous person that made it. The person that made it goes under the names James Richard, which is a pseudonym that comes from Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr's real names. And this anonymous person claims that he met someone who knew the Beatles in a parallel universe, and like this is where this album came from. It's probably an absolutely bogus story, but it's kind of cool. White Bic lighters are bad luck. So there's this myth that artists who use white Bic lighters always end up dead. This sort of goes hand in hand with the 27 Club. There are a bunch of artists that owned white Bic lighters, such as Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, and Kurt Cobain, and these are really the main artists that this myth comes from. Wind of Change was written by the CIA. This is a very simple one. It's basically just saying that the CIA wrote Wind of Change as a way of easing Cold War tensions. I couldn't really find much more than that about this, but if you guys know anything, let me know, because it's kind of a cool conspiracy theory. The Rolling Stones played Sympathy for the Devil when a crowd member was killed. So this is only partly true. The Rolling Stones had a concert in California at the time, and somebody was murdered at the show. A young black man was unfortunately killed by Hell's Angels at this show. And there was so much misinformation on like the song the Stones were playing at the time. A lot of people thought they were playing Sympathy for the Devil when this happened or after this happened, but this just isn't true. The only true part of this one is that somebody died at a show, but the Stones weren't playing Sympathy for the Devil. Killing an Arab disclaimer sticker. So The Cure made a song based on a book called The Stranger, which is about a man killing an Arab, but the book is like a lot more than just that. Robert Smith knew the song title would probably cause controversy, so on the vinyl record he put this disclaimer sticker on it. Unfortunately, this didn't help at all, and still a lot of bigoted people like use this as this screwed up anthem. But the sticker is real, it does exist, but I don't think it's on like a digital copy. I think it's only on like the physical vinyl album cover. The CIA killed Prince. Prince died not long ago after taking a pill that he thought was Vicodin, but it was actually laced with fentanyl, and that's what ultimately ended his life. But the thing is, nobody really knew who did this to Prince. They didn't think that he did it himself. The unfortunate thing is, nobody really continued the investigation. Like, he kind of just died and that was it. His family wasn't happy about this. A lot of other people weren't happy about this. And so when you don't have somebody to blame, people sort of just throw the government under the bus. I don't see why the CIA would have a reason to kill Prince like this, but this is just a conspiracy theory floating around. Blink-182 almost violated the Geneva Conventions. On their debut album cover, Enema of the State, there's a girl wearing like a nurse outfit, and originally she had the Red Cross on her hat. I don't really know how this relates to the Geneva Convention, but the American Red Cross Association told them that they had to remove the Red Cross or else they'd be violating the Geneva Conventions. So that's why on the album cover now, she's just wearing a plain white hat. The original pressings of the album did have her wearing the Red Cross, but they had to take that off because they were spooked by the American Red Cross Association. Rob Zombie was a producer on Pee-wee's Playhouse. Pee-wee's Playhouse was a kid's show that ran in the mid-80s, and I think it went into the early 90s, but this is 100% true. Rob Zombie, who is known for like horror and stuff, was on like the most innocent kid show of all time. Liam Gallagher threatened to stab Sacha Baron Cohen in the eye. This was a joke, and it ultimately wasn't true, because he wanted to stab her in both eyes. That's really all I have for this one. Alright, tier 5. Mama Cass choked on a ham sandwich. Mama Cass was a singer for the band called the Mama and Papas, and her bandmate Sue Cameron got a call from her manager one day breaking the news that Cass had just died. The manager said to write out that she died by choking on a ham sandwich, and Sue Cameron just did it because she knew something was wrong, so she sort of just followed the rules. This pretty obviously isn't at all how she died, but the legend stuck so many years later, and it's honestly kind of sad because, I mean, she doesn't deserve to be remembered by dying from a ham sandwich. Possum Kingdom is about a serial killer. Possum Kingdom Lake is a lake in Texas, and there was a story that sort of shrouded the lake in mystery. Legend had it that a man prowled the lake at night and would find a woman there to become his, like, queen, but once he lured her behind his house, he would do very bad things and ultimately end up ending her life. So a lot of people think the song Possum Kingdom is about this lake and this story, but Vaden Todd Lewis, the singer for the Toadies, said he made the story up about the lake and it's completely false. The song itself might still be about a serial killer, we don't really know, but the story about the lake itself is completely false. Midnight Oil was a band that broke up in 2002, and Peter Garrett was a former band member with them. However, after the band broke up, Garrett became a political figure in Australia. He had a seat in Australia's House of Representatives and became Minister of the Environment, but eventually he resigned from this political position, and this is what sparked the theory that he was going to become Midnight Oil's manager. This didn't happen, but a lot of people wanted to float the rumor around because they were excited to see that the band might get back together, but unfortunately Garrett didn't go back with the band. The Doors' CIA ties. This whole theory sparked from a podcast called An Impossible Way of Life. They developed this conspiracy theory that the whole hippie movement in the 60s was designed to hook kids on drugs and sex and rock and roll. They did this because they thought like the drugs would make sure that people didn't overthrow America's military complex. And the reason they thought that like the Doors were part of this, and I don't know why this one says the Doors, there are a lot more people involved. They said Frank Zappa, Papa John Phillips, and David Crosby were all children of members in the American military, so that's why like these people were like pretty much planted by the government. So this one's basically like an extreme version of industry plants, except it's like the whole hippie movement had CIA ties because these 4 dudes were said to like be planted here by the government. A lot of people say the podcast is just like poking fun and joking, but you never know who's being serious or not. Pretty obvious this one's fake though, and if it isn't fake, it's a really cool story. My Generation was once banned. This is actually true. For a brief moment, it was banned by BBC, and the reasoning's kinda dumb, but it's funny. BBC banned it because they thought it would be offensive to stutterers. Now, I'm not 100% sure if this is the true reason, because it sounds like it could be complete bogus, but if it is, I kinda like it for an explanation. Enigma of Elgar Enigma's Variations. So there was a composer in the late 1800s named Edward Elgar, and honestly, this whole entry was super confusing to me. Iceberg linked me to a Wikipedia page explaining this, but after reading it, my mind just turned into mush. Apparently, this guy made a bunch of compositions, and they developed some sort of story, but no one's ever been able to solve the puzzle. Some people think there's no puzzle at all, and the whole thing's just like a sort of pretentious thing he made to seem deep. I can't judge this at all because I have no idea, but the Wikipedia page is super easy to find if you want to look into it. Also, I could be completely wrong about this whole entry, so just take my words lightly here. It seems like a pretty cool thing to research, I just don't really understand it that much. Michael Jackson, Marlon Brando, and Elizabeth Taylor took a road trip right after 9/11. So this was a rumor that didn't start spreading until 2011. There was a Vanity Fair article posted that talked about the three's road trip, and to me it's written like a fan fiction, and I don't know if they intended this article to like be true or to be fan fiction, but some people believe that these 3 did go on a road trip right after 9/11. Michael Jackson apparently had concerts just a couple days before in Madison Square Garden, so he was definitely in the New York vicinity, but the question is why the 3 of them would take a road trip together. Anyway, whether it's real or not, there have been a lot of entertainment things made around it. In 2016, there was a movie announced that was going to be like a fictional story about their trip, but I don't think that movie was ever produced. However, there's a series called Urban Myths, and there was an episode recorded about the 3 people's road trips. However, that episode was never released out of respect for Michael Jackson's family. So it's out there somewhere. Maybe it's a piece of lost media. I doubt the actual story is true. It's just like another dumb little urban legend that probably is false. Freddie Mercury went to a gay bar with Princess Diana in disguise. This is true because the research I did I actually found on biography.com. I think that's a reliable source, and they had pictures, so this one's gotta be true to me. She wore different clothes to blend in before she went into the bar, and Freddie Mercury helped her get in. She had to do this undercover because it was the 80s, and if Princess Diana did anything wrong, the world would like blow up on her for it. People got a lot more bothered by certain things back in the 80s than they would now, so this would have been like breaking a social norm, I guess. It's kind of cool though, because after she did this, she came out as like a prominent figure in the LGBTQ community, and after she did go to this bar, she shook hands with an AIDS patient after, which at the time was revolutionary because people still weren't really sure how the disease spread, and they thought like maybe it could spread through like hand-to-hand contact or something. But yeah, it's just a nice, lighthearted little story, and I think it's cool that it's true. Paul Blart Mall Cop 2 syncs up with Dark Side of the Moon. So a YouTuber named Macroton made a video called Blart Side of the Moon, and the video syncs audio of Dark Side of the Moon with Paul Blart 2 Mall Cop, and it's kind of funny how well it fits. However, Mall Cop being like the dumb movie that it is, I feel like any music would sync up to it well. It is pretty funny how well it syncs up though. I will admit it does sync up pretty well. Maybe even better than the Wizard of Oz thing. Alright, tier 6, the final tier. Led Zeppelin mud shark incident. So in 1969, the band decided to hole up at the Edgewater Inn after one of their tours. And legend has it, a willing groupie did sexual acts with them that involved a mud shark that they caught earlier that day. Nobody knows if this is true. As far as I know, nobody has confirmed or denied it. I think people who have talked about it did say it was consensual, as if that matters, because this whole thing is still really weird, but it involved pieces of shark and it was just really gross to read. And if this is real, that's just wild. Eiffel 65's I'm Blue was based on a cannibal's chant. So everybody knows the song I'm Blue by Eiffel 65. If you don't know it, look it up. I am like 100% sure you've heard it before. It has the weird music video with the blue people. But basically this is just a creepypasta that if you play the song backwards, it contains a hidden message that says, hide the body, eat the body. I looked up the song in reverse. I could hear it a little bit, but I don't think it was intentional. It's just kind of funny. Wormparty.ogg. I didn't find much on this other than that it's a creepypasta, and I think it has like 8,000 views on YouTube. The Worm Party itself is a YouTube video, and apparently if you play it backwards, it contains some subliminal creepy messages. Also, it's called wormparty.ogg, but when you go to the video, it says files 51. I think that's the number on it. It says files something, and nobody knows what that is supposed to mean. Supposedly, the audio on this video was found on someone's iPod and uploaded to YouTube, but I think this whole thing is just like a creepypasta / ARG. I don't think there's any like curse to the video or anything. It's just a put together ARG. The Alice killings. I don't know why this is on here because I didn't find anything related to music that had to do with it. But for a while this was considered to be a creepypasta until it came out that this was actually a real thing that happened in Japan. It went down between 1999 and 2005 and there were a series of killings. But the victims of the killer had no relationship to each other, so nobody was really able to track down the killer. The only similarity between these killings was that each time a victim was killed, there would be a card that said the name Alice on it next to their body. For a long time, this was just an urban legend and nobody really took it seriously or believed it. However, it came out later that this was true and they found the guy who did it. I'm pretty sure he's behind bars now, and he was sentenced to 142 years in prison. Reading my notes over again, the reason this gets labeled with misinformation is because the murders didn't happen in Japan, they happened in Spain, but there's still the Alice killings, the playing card thing is still true, and the victim thing is still true, it just happened in Spain, not Japan. Harry Nilsson's coffin was lost during an earthquake. There was an earthquake that took place around where Nilsson's coffin was, however, this legend is false. His coffin didn't get lost. The earthquake part's the only true part of this. Alright, this is a mouthful. Jisang der Jungling's Hidden JPEG. This is another creepypasta, and it's supposedly about a picture that is turned into audio. There's a picture that accompanies this, and if you want to look it up, you can. I'm not going to show it here because I don't want it to affect my analytics. I don't think it would. But it's really easy to find and it's not that creepy. However, apparently there's like a hidden image of this picture. It's a picture of a boy and it's like red and creepy. I don't think it's like a real photo, but there are like bloody effects on it. And apparently there's another one that has white eyes. In the original, he just has like dark black eyes. But apparently if you see the one with white eyes, if you like convert the audio to a picture, which I don't even know how you do that, but if you do, and you see the one with white eyes, you'll be like cursed for life or something. But yeah, I'm pretty sure this is just a creepypasta. It's kind of a cool little idea for a creepypasta, but I don't think the white eye picture exists unless someone made it after hearing this creepypasta. Alright, saving the most interesting one for last, Death Grip's Manchester bombing links. A couple years ago, a user on Reddit named Demilitarized Zone made a video comparing a new Death Grip single to the Manchester bombing that happened during an Ariana Grande concert in 2017. The video delves a lot into numerology, like the study of numbers and what this has to do with the event. Specifically, the number 22, which is like supposedly the greatest number in numerology, and this number popped up a lot on the day of the bombing. For example, the Death Grip single that they released on that day, the same day of the bombing, was 22 minutes long. They released it 22 minutes before the bombing happened, and the terrorist was 22, and there's a bunch more coincidences of this. There were also lyrics in the Death Grip single that sort of related to the concert. However, it's very, completely 100% possible that this is just a coincidence, because a lot of Death Grip songs are violent. And even though this definitely is a coincidence, it's still an interesting video, and you should check it out. I'll link it into the description, and you can watch it yourself. Yeah, even though it's just an urban legend, it's still cool that there are this many connections between the two. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching. I'm glad I could get another Iceberg out for you. It's hard to think of music icebergs, so if you have any ideas for them, let me know, because I do enjoy making these. They give me something to do, and I know you guys enjoy them, and I wanted to give back to you, since icebergs are kind of what blew up my channel a little bit. So yeah, thanks again. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will catch you next time.